This episode of Trying to Figure It Out is brought to you by Hacienda Village Meat and Italian Deli. They have the most amazing, authentic Italian meats, sandwiches, and the most amazing owners. They're located in Hacienda Heights, California. If you're in the Southern California area, be sure to go check them out and go get your meats from them. Welcome back to Trying to Figure It Out. This week, I'm here with someone who feels like the big sister of TikTok. She has wisdom and a wonderfully charming presence. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you today. Sierra Boudreaux, welcome to Trying to Figure It Out.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here too. You are from Dallas. You flew into LA this morning and you're flying home to Dallas tonight.
It just all worked out to where I got to come be on the show and then got to do some stuff with my management company. I have some friends here, so I'm trying to figure out where I can see them. But then going back tonight, because I've learned I love being at my house. I love being at my house so much. And being away for a couple of days, I'm like, yeah, fun, cool. By that third day, I'm like, oh, I have to go.
I feel
so
that.
I was looking at my schedule for this week and I was like, I could just do a day trip and that could be perfect.
I'm so glad that this worked out and that you're here. One of the things that really drew me to your page is you have a series on TikTok called You're Going to Be Fine This Week.
Hi, my love. You're going to be fine this week, but let's talk about it super quick. Hi, my love. You're going to be fine this week, but let's talk about it super quick. Hi, my love. You're going to be fine this week, but let's talk about it super quick. Biggest difference between who you are right now and who you want to be is how much you're willing to start doing or stop doing.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you started this series?
I started it one day. I was just having like a really, can I curse on the podcast?
Go for it.
Oh, perfect. I was having a really shitty day, honestly. And I have learned that I process a lot by just talking out loud. And I built this community online where it seemed like a lot of us were going through really similar things. But I was also kind of experimenting with boundaries, right? Where I started on TikTok and I was so open about everything in my life. And then I started to realize if I'm going to share it online, I should expect to get some kind of, response to that. And there's some things I don't want a response to. And so I was like, how can I share this and be open and vulnerable, still connect with my audience without feeling like I'm talking about myself per se.
Totally.
And so I set up the camera and I was like, you know what? Hi, my love, you're going to be fine this week. And there's some weeks when I film that series and I feel like I'm talking to myself, but I try to be really clear. I'm not a therapist. I have an advertising degree and half a psychology minor. So I am not a professional in any way, but I think that's what makes it so special that I'm just a person who's in it with you.
100%.
And I love it. I love that series.
I love it too. What are some of your favorite messages that you've shared?
One of my favorites, I think, is centered around goodness, this idea of goodness. I've kind of grappled with that my entire life, of feeling like I wanted to be good and good enough, but not really ever knowing what that meant. And one day I realized, okay, I'm trying so hard to be good, but good enough for who? Good in what sense? And so I talked to my followers a lot about that. And I said, okay, well, what if we drop that? What if our entire life isn't dedicated to being good, but just being, simply being? Like, what does that look like to just sit still in who you are without feeling like you constantly need to optimize like a brand or like a business, and just exist and flow like a person? And I found that there's a lot of comfort in that for me, and fortunately for my audience too.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned something about how originally when you were posting content, you were sharing a lot of your personal stories. How did you find the balance, and how do you continue to find the balance of sharing what you need to and giving advice that might not even necessarily be for yourself?
Yeah, so I started posting on TikTok, just like silly little videos. A lot of sounds was really big in 2021. I started doing that, and then I was like, okay, well, I want to break out of that because I feel like I have a lot to say, but what do I want to talk about? And at the time, I had just gotten out of this really bad financially and emotionally abusive relationship, and I was dating for the first time. I was just like, okay, I want to date. I want to get on the apps. I want to try that and see what it's like. And so I started posting like get ready with me to go on dates, and then I would do date recaps. I would do lives getting ready for the dates, and that was so much fun. But then I learned that the more you share online, the more people are going to kind of respond to it as if they know you, as if they were on that date with you. And when my fiance and I, Alex, actually started dating, I was like, oh, hard pivot. I'm actually not going to share that much about our relationship. And I think I was a little bit nervous about that because you never want to give your audience something that you're just going to snatch out from under them.
Right.
But there is a big difference between sharing my experience dating and sharing my relationship, which involves another person who's also in that. So setting boundaries, I think, just comes with realizing that you've maybe given a bit too much. And then like, oh, I don't feel so great about that. Totally. But because of the content that I create with my audience, I think that they're so comfortable with me changing my mind and changing my style of content and creating new boundaries. So I'm really lucky in that sense.
What about when you're not doing fine? How do you find the strength to tell your followers that they're going to be fine this week if you're not feeling fine that week?
When my mom died, I kind of struggled with that a little bit because I was like, oh, I'm not doing well. Like, this is such a weird experience. And I had never experienced grief in that way. I mean, your mom only dies once. So I realized that I had set up, You're Gonna Be Fine This Week to come out every Sunday, 5 p.m. And that's what my followers could look forward to. They knew, where to find me in that way. And I was like, how do I go online and tell everyone else they're gonna be fine this week and I'm not doing fine this week? But I have set something up for people to look forward to and to expect. And when I get to the root of it, that brings me a lot of joy. Like, I love it so, so much. And getting to go online and in some way find some normalcy in the really big tornado that felt like my life in January was really comforting to me. And to my surprise, I posted, You're Gonna Be Fine This Week. And my followers were incredible. They were like, hey, you don't have to be. Like, thank you so much, but you don't have to be fine. You can take the break that you need. You can do what you need to do. Hi, my love. You're going to be fine this week, but let's talk about it super quick. The shame that you're carrying from previous decisions is not helping you make better ones, okay? It's just helping you, forcing you really to relive scenarios that you can do absolutely nothing about. You're so focused on how you could have been better to that other person, that other thing, that other environment, that you're actually forgetting that you can, right now, just be good to yourself. Just be gentle to yourself. Just be patient with yourself. Just knowing that I could show up in that way, it made me feel like I had some kind of purpose, some kind of reason to get out of bed and keep going. Right. And that was incredible for me.
Yeah. I'm so sorry for your loss. And thank you for sharing this with us. We appreciate the openness and the vulnerability. I want to talk a little bit more about your experience with grief, because I think not a lot of people our age have experienced grief like this. What has your journey with grief looked like since you've lost your mom?
Some days I am like, oh, I've done it. Like, I've cried every single tear there is to cry. I am good. I've healed. No more grief. And then I realize it's not true, because every day that I experience something is another day that my mom is not experiencing that. And my mom and I had a really rocky relationship. Transparently, we weren't very close. We hadn't spoken very much in the recent years. And so there's layers there, of course, just losing your mom, but then also grappling so much with all the stuff that you could have said, all the stuff that you could have done. And I want to be so clear with anyone who has experienced grief and maybe struggles with, I should have been better, I should have shown up more, I should have said more. When someone passes, they become perfect in a way that you don't get to be perfect. They become perfect because they can't answer for anything anymore. And so the responsibility, the blame feels like it's all on you. And that's not true. I felt like I had so much regret for all of the stuff that I didn't say. But upon reflection, I didn't know. I didn't know that was going to happen. It's your mom dying before you have a chance to forgive her at 26 happens in the movies. It happens in an Emily Henry book. It doesn't happen in your life. And then when you realize, oh, it can happen to anyone, these sad, these scary things can happen to anyone, you realize how much grace you really deserve, or at least I did. And as far as the stages of grief, I don't know that it's linear. I don't think that it can be in any way. Some days I feel good. And then the other day I was leaving a comedy show with one of my friends, and I was opening her car door. I looked down and I saw a pack of Newport cigarettes, and my mom smoked Newport cigarettes. And I was like, oh my God. And it felt fun. It felt light.
Right.
But then I was driving a couple days after that, and I heard an Ed Sheeran song that she loved, and I started sobbing. So I think it just depends on the day.
Right.
And I've gotten a lot more comfortable with realizing there's no way for grief to look in order for it to be right.
You mentioned that you've seen signs or little things that remind you of your mom. Can you talk to me about some signs that you've seen that make you feel her presence?
There's this red cardinal that I have been seeing outside of my window, and it's so interesting because it'll come and it'll kind of like knock on the window, and it'll go over there and it'll fly away. And I have a bird feeder right there, and so I was telling one of my best friends about it, and she's like, it's so weird. I've never seen a cardinal see food and not eat it. So I was doing some research about it, and according to spirituality, it can be just a sign of hope or a loved one coming to visit you, a loved one that's passed on coming to visit you, and maybe that feels healing. But one of my followers, I was sharing that, and they said, in grief, if you want it to be a sign, it is, and if you don't want it to be a sign, it's not. And that was really comforting to me, that on the days I see the red cardinal, if I need that to be a sign of my mom, oh, perfect. Thank you for being here. And if not, it's just a red cardinal on the door. That's
great advice.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah.
What are some actually helpful ways that people have shown up for you as you're working through this grief?
I love to say that if you're going to show up for someone, don't give them a job. So if someone is experiencing grief or just like a really hard time, and you say, hi, I'm so sorry, what can I do for you? That's a job. And the intentions can be so good. But when I was like in the thick of my grief, which some days I feel like I'm still in the thick of my grief, but in the beginning stages, I couldn't do a job. Like I really couldn't answer. I didn't know what I needed. But my friends and my fiance, best people in the world, truly, I didn't cook a meal for myself until like 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Truly, did not cook a meal, did not order groceries, did not like none of it. It was just done.
Right.
And one of my really good friends, she came by just like with so many groceries, didn't even ask me what I needed, what I wanted.
Right.
And I think that kind of community is so valuable because she knew what I liked. She had been in my home. She had seen my fridge. She knows what I like to eat. There was no job for me. It was just, I got to be there, and she made me meals. She froze some stuff. She just made sure I had everything that I needed. I had mentioned like, oh, I've been craving chocolate lately. And then my doorbell rang, and there was like every chocolate bar snack that you could imagine. And it was so beautiful. And I was so thankful for that. And I think that if you want to show up for someone, if you don't know how, maybe the best thing is just to take a minute and let the people who do know how to show up for them do that without centering yourself in their grief. But a lot of times I found that with people that I was close to but weren't like in my innermost circle, just showing up like they normally did was so healing for me. And one of my spin instructors from Denver, I thought it was so incredibly kind and so warm. He had posted, he had sent me this remix of a song that he had played a few times in a spin studio or a spin class that I had been to, and that was it. Just sent it and said like, thought you'd like this.
That's
and
really sweet.
I loved it. It's what I needed. I didn't really need another, I'm sorry for your loss, because I was sorry for my loss. Like I didn't need everyone to tell me that. I felt that. Right. But I just needed to feel like I was a person outside of my grief. Right. And a lot of people provided that for me.
Yeah, it is true. You know, instead of saying, do you need anything? Or can I send you food? Just send the food.
Just send the food.
Just send it. If you can't provide that for someone, that's also okay. Yeah. You can just show up.
1,000%. And I think we've kind of lost the art of actually showing up for people. We think that sending a DoorDash is the same thing as showing up. And I guess, you know, in some way it is. The end product is the same. But I think it's so different to say, hey, I dropped some groceries off outside. I'm around for a few minutes if you want to come out. If not, it's there for you. Because someone's presence, someone's energy means so much. I think that the way that you connect with people in person is so different than over a screen. And screen time is so valuable, but it's not the same. Totally. And we've really disconnected from what it means to inconvenience ourselves, to convenience someone else.
Yeah. You kind of answered my next question, which was what isn't helpful for people to do, but is there any other specific things that you feel like are really not helpful to do for someone when they're grieving?
Everyone's experience with loss is so different. And so I think to say this isn't helpful in an overarching way, really, I don't think would do anyone a service. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you're sending a message or doing anything and you think, oh, well, what if they don't want to hear from me? Or I don't know how they're going to receive this, or I don't know what to say. If you're thinking about yourself, you're centering yourself. Mm-hmm. I think the best way to show up for someone is simply removing yourself from the equation. Yeah. It is not about you. It's not about how they're going to receive you. I will say, maybe this could be helpful. When someone goes through a tragedy of any sort, everyone's going to rush to be there for the first week. A few less people for the first month. By month 3, people forget because everyone has their own life and their own loss and their own joys and their own sorrows, you know? Texting someone, showing up for someone 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later is so important. Yeah. I think if you're going to show up, don't drop off after that first week, because a year later, my mom's still going to be gone. A year later, tragedies, still compound. And so I think just continuing to show up and be persistent in that.
Absolutely. That is like my number one advice for people. Continue showing up. Don't think that 1 week or 2 weeks is enough for someone. Like, people will need you forever. This is something you're always going to be going through.
Trauma is so weird like that. You can be fine, or your version of fine. Mm-hmm. And then 6 months later, a year later, you're like, oh God, like, ow.
I was not fine.
Yeah, I was not fine. And like, right now I'm not fine. Yeah. And it can feel almost embarrassing, mm-hmm. right? To be so far removed from the actual incident. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I have to cancel brunch because I can't get out of bed today. And you want to just move on. You want to be, you want to show up and seem like it doesn't affect you. But trauma doesn't exist like that. It doesn't manifest like that. Mm-hmm. And allowing yourself to grieve and mourn whatever the trauma is, like it's the first day, is so, so helpful and not at all embarrassing. Also, learn that, God, I don't always have to do the work. Like, some days I just don't have it. Yes. I don't know why I'm reacting that way. I don't know why I feel that way. And I don't have to sit down and do a 10-step journal and psychoanalyze myself. And like, I don't have to do the work. Some days I can just be fucking sad. You know what I mean? And that can be fine.
It's like real.
I feel, are always trying to analyze ourselves and intellectualize our feelings. And that's so unnecessary and so exhausting. And then I think, are afraid of our emotions. We think, oh, if I feel this, then I have to go down the rabbit hole and experience all of it.
100%.
No, just feel it, let it go if it goes, let it stay if it stays. And
mm-hmm.
that's that.
It's important to do the work, but the days where you do the work, remember that it is work and you have to be up for it. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of it. I kind of want to switch gears and get into another topic. Something that you posted and have shared with your followers is that you dabbled in sobriety. What initially sparked your decision to stop drinking?
Yeah, so I was living in Denver at the time that I decided to stop drinking, and I was going through a lot of life changes. This was before I lost my mom, and I was going out a lot at this point with my friends, because I was also feeling a lot of just discontentment with living in Denver. I kind of felt like time was up, but I was drinking a lot to kind of like cover that up and to feel like I was in the right place. So I woke up one morning with this horrible hangover, and I had a Pilates class booked, and then I was going to get brunch with one of my friends, and I was so excited because she was moving soon, but I like literally couldn't get off my couch. Like, I felt so just awful. I hadn't had a hangover like that since I was 17. Like, it was just really, really bad. And so I had to text her and cancel. And I was like, oh, I don't want to live like that. Like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. I have to figure something out. And so I downloaded the app I Am Sober, and I put in like my last drink. And I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to do this, but I'm just not going to drink right now. And Alex and I had a vacation coming up. And so I was like, okay, maybe I just won't drink till I go on vacation. And then we were on vacation, and I was like, I don't want to drink. And he was like, okay, well then if you're not drinking, I'm not drinking. Cool, we're not drinking. And I was like, oh, perfect. Yeah. And then before I knew it, 8 months went by, and I just hadn't drank. And in the beginning, it was kind of like an active choice. But then over time, it was like, it's just something I don't do. Kind of like if somebody offers you an illicit drug from like a baggie, you're like, oh, it's just like something I don't do. And like, if you want to do that, cool. Love that for you. But I'm not interested, whatever. That's kind of how I felt with alcohol. Yeah. I was like, oh, I love that y'all are having fun. I just don't drink. And when I bought my house in September, I threw a housewarming party, and I wanted to be a good host. So I got every alcohol that you could imagine. Yeah. And I was setting it up. And I was like, God, I wish I could drink this. Like, I want to so bad. And all of my friends were there, and I was like, I want to drink so bad. And my best friend Hallie was like, you can drink if you want to, but you don't really want to. And she was so right. Like, I didn't really want to, but I wanted to feel like I could. I wanted to feel like I was part of it. Right. So the next day, I set up my camera, and I started talking to my audience, and I was like, I have been sober, and like I almost gave up on it, and I'm realizing right now my sobriety is not about not drinking. It's about a commitment to myself. It's not about the alcohol, but it's about honoring myself and showing up for myself and just meeting myself where I am. It's okay that I want to drink, but it is not okay to give up on myself, because that would just be like the easy thing. Right. And I felt really good about that for a while. And then my mom died, and I was like, what, which way is up? You know, why am I not drinking? What am I getting out of this? And then I felt like my sobriety felt more restrictive than it did comforting. And I was like, now I feel like I can't drink, and not being able to at all feels really, really scary. And so I started drinking again. And at first I was like, yeah, this is so fun. I have freedom. I, can do whatever I want. And then I was like, oh, actually, this is just like a Band-Aid. And I don't judge myself for trying to find a Band-Aid in such a time like that. But I am so proud of how quickly I realized what it was and could acknowledge what it was. And am I going to stop drinking completely again? I don't know. But I approach it with such a flexibility. But I do want to add in, I am so thankful to be able to approach it with the flexibility, because I've never struggled with alcohol addiction. Right. And addiction is an illness and a disease, and like not your fault, and nothing to feel shame over. Just because someone you follow online or someone had a dabble with sobriety, and they can kind of drink and not drink when they want to, but you can't, you can't and should not compare yourself. Right. Because those are two completely different experiences.
How was it having alcohol while experiencing such a traumatic loss at the same time?
Sometimes it was like, oh, this probably isn't healthy. Like, this isn't the best thing to be doing right now. But sometimes I was like, no, I feel really good about this. Yeah. I feel good about being able to have a drink with my friends. I feel good. But then one day I was like, oh, I'm kind of drinking a lot. Like, I'm drinking a lot, and I don't really feel very good. Yeah. And I don't feel very proud of that, because I'm not drinking just because I was invited out and I just want to have like a patio margarita. I'm like drinking because I feel just upset, like internally. And so I posted this thing on my Instagram of like my rules for drinking, and I shared them, and I was like, okay, these are the guidelines that I'm going to follow. And it was like, don't drink when you're sad. Be comfortable with the idea of sobriety. Be comfortable with the idea of drink. Like, just allow yourself the flexibility. And because I allowed myself so much flexibility there, I found that my relationship with alcohol got so much better so quickly.
So you took some time you incorporated alcohol back into your life after losing your mom. You were drinking, and then you had another moment of like, okay, reset, round 2.
Yeah.
I'm going to now continue incorporating alcohol into my life, but under these guidelines. What was the overall response to these rules when you posted them?
Positive for the most part. But then, you have some people who are, I think, trying to look out for me, of course. They're like, hey, are you drinking because of your mom? And it's like, yeah, a little bit, and like, because this sucks. This is one of the worst things I've experienced. It was so sudden. I didn't know it was going to happen. And for the most part, the reception was so generous and so kind, mostly because I have really tried to drive home for years and years. The best thing you can do is change your mind if you want to change your mind. And I changed my mind about drinking, and I was allowed to do that. But like I also said, I don't owe anyone an explanation for why I started to stop drinking.
Right.
So I just try to, stay true to that.
Yeah, and there's so much power in that. I want to ask you what you have coming up that you're looking forward to, and, anything that we can look forward to as followers of your account.
Oh, what do I have coming up? So just more, content on TikTok, on Instagram, of course. I have a podcast. I'm On Your Side podcast. I took a little break because I was processing my grief a lot. And while I do think that there's a lot of value in sharing about grief online, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't processing the entirety, of everything. I wanted to keep a little bit of that for myself. So hopefully soon, I'm On Your Side will come back.
Amazing.
And yeah, that's what I've got going on right now.
Well, I want to thank you. This was such a fun time. Thank you for coming here and being here for the day. I'm so glad it worked out. And thank you to everyone for listening. We will be back next week with another episode of Trying to Figure It Out.
Thank you.